Hello, I'm Matt, and this Loxley Quality Time tutorial is to help you with this painting, A Calm Retreat from the Cantisso collection. If you haven't already watched our techniques tutorial videos, please have a look at them before starting your project. They give you some valuable information about painting with the quality time range and help you get the most out of your quality time. This video contains specific information about your chosen painting, but we assume that you're already familiar with the general techniques covered in our tutorial videos. A Calm Retreat features the church in the village of Chaddesley Corbett, which is situated in North Worcestershire. In Saxon times, the village was named Chadleigh, or place of Chad. The second part of the name comes from the local Corbett family, who had a large influence in the area. The main part of the church dates back to the 12th century, with a number of extensions and alterations over the years. I have added a robin to this picture, which is perhaps the best known and most easily recognised of all British birds. Alright, I'm going to start with the sky, and I've mixed this pale blue using mainly white with a small amount of the lighter of the two blues. There is a technique video on painting skies, which I recommend you to have a look at before doing this sky. It gives you more information specifically on skies. And I'm using the larger of the two brushes and long, even, horizontal brush strokes, trying to get rid of as many brush strokes as possible. It will look a bit patchy at stage one, but that's to be expected. That's quite normal. And then I'm just adding a little bit of more white as I'm coming down the sky here, working up to the outline of the trees. Refer to your photo as much as you need to. And then these branches here, they're showing through the paint, which is what I want. So I can pick those up later, paint those in. And then I'm going round the cloud areas as well. So you've got the tree line to work up to and the cloud line here. Because the white is more transparent, it's harder to paint over the blue, so if you just work up to it like this, it's the best results. Using just the tip of the hair and keep loading it regularly. You can go around the edge of the canvas, which is why we've designed it with no staples or tacks in the side. Loxley was a pioneer in this, because the picture looks more finished even if it's not framed. Something we came up with, which has been a huge success for us. I'm just adding a bit of blue in between where the vegetation, if you look at your photo, where it'll show through the tree. Again, a bit paler as we're coming down. I'm just turning the brush onto the edge for smaller areas like this, in between the clouds. You can use any angle of the brush. And just going into the smaller areas with the tip of the brush. I'm adding more white as I come down to the horizon here, because the sky is always paler as it gets nearer the horizon. Looks more realistic. Working around the outline of the church, you can use brush angles like this to cut it up the edge and then just finish off horizontally to get rid of any brush marks, make sure they're going the same way. So that's my sky nearly complete at stage one. I'm just adding a bit of blue under these trees here where it shines through the branches here. Pleased with how the sky's come out. You see it's paler towards the horizon. So now I'm just working on the clouds. Mostly white and just a tiny bit of blue still on my brush, just to give them a bit of dimension. You can put the paint on thicker for clouds, so it just gives a bit more texture, and the brush doesn't have to go in the same direction, so you get different angles in the paint like this. And again, I'm just working up to the outline of the church. Don't want it to go over the edge. And again, this is just at stage one, so there will be going over these clouds again. So I'm now painting the church, and I've mixed this pale grey using mainly white with a small amount of the dark brown. I'm keeping to the outlines. It's okay to cut along the edge at these angles and then just smooth it out in the direction of the stones so that any brush marks, they look like the actual stones rather than going the wrong angle. And I'm smoothing the paint out so that you can see the outline showing through, so I can pick that up at stage two. You'll notice that I'm painting each area of the church as an individual part. And this is so that they don't all blend in together. I want each part of the church to look separate and not all merge into one mass of the same colour, same shade of grey. I'm just working around these windows. It's important not to get it on the windows because they're a different colour. Just keep loading your brush as much as you need to and then smoothing it out. Nice even brush strokes. I can cut down this edge like this. finish off horizontally in the direction of the stone, working up to the edges here. Refer to your photograph as much as you need to for the which bits of the stone need painting. So I'm using the small brush now, get more detail with this, and these intricate parts around the window here. Again, referring to your photograph on your instruction sheet. Nice gentle brush strokes. You're using the tip of the hair and keep keep loading it as much as you need to. So it's just really gentle brush strokes, there's no hurry. You can take as long over this as you need to. Just get rid of any excess paint. Once you've covered the area, you can go back over it again just to smooth it all out. You'll see the outlines showing through here, which is good. And then while I've got this grey, I'm going to do some of the stones, the gravestones and monuments with this small brush. So there's quite a bit of detail here. Just following nature's flow. So whichever way the stones go, you paint in that direction and then smooth it out like this. And again, I'm painting them as individual stones so they don't all merge together. They want to stand out apart from each other. So just creating different shades of grey by adding different amounts of the dark brown. Going along this edge, I'm leaving a bit white here because there's snow collected on these stones here. You can go back in with the white and build that up as well once this grey has dried. Just working around this downpipe. So you see each area I'm painting as an individual piece. And you keep the shape, you don't lose these important parts of the architecture. I'm just carefully cutting around this robin with the paint. I don't want to get it onto the robin, so it's just keeping it on the church building only. I'm just putting some of this grey on the little cross here, top of the second part of the roof. Keeping off the roof because that's different colour. The spire's come out good. I wanted it a bit paler, so I've added a bit more white just so it looks further away. And the same with this part of the church down here. I'm just doing these gravestones as well with this grey, working my way across these areas here. You can use slightly different shades of grey, it makes it look more interesting. Slightly darker for some of these stones, sort of hidden away under the trees here. I want this one quite pale because it's in the sunlight. Well, as I'm pushing and pulling this colour and adding slightly different shades of this grey, it's actually making it look more like real stone. It's good to stand back and have a look at your picture, make sure you've not missed any areas. Like around the windows here, I've got this bit to work on still. And again, I'm using this small brush because it's more detail area. So you just use whichever brush is most practical for the particular area you're painting. And keep loading the brush with paint. Don't want it to run dry while you're painting. That's come out well. I'm just being careful not to paint along the top here where this snow is. Just painting up to that line there. So we've got a bit of snow on the roof and again up here as well. And I've missed a bit on the spire as well. You can turn the canvas to a better angle if it suits you. I'm just keeping it this way for the video. So by painting these as individual sections, you can actually get this side slightly darker like it is in the photo. Just put in some of the detail on this stonework on the end. Right, now so I'm now painting these trees here, and I've mixed this green from yellow and green that's in the pack. There is a video on painting trees and foliage which will give you more information, which is worth a look before you do this. And you'll notice that I'm using the tip of the brush with more dabbing brush strokes, particularly on the edge here because I want nice sharp edges to the foliage where it meets the sky. You can use the smaller brush if you prefer. These are like dabbing brush strokes because I want the texture to show in the paint. And I'm working around these blue areas where I've painted the sky. Can you see the brush strokes? This way it actually looks like the foliage, the little needles on this yew tree. This is just stage one, so we will be coming back over this with a darker green, again with the similar brush strokes. So I've got the smaller brush here, just for some of these branches that are sticking out into the sky, so I can get more precise brush marks. Make sure all the canvas is covered with the paint, so anywhere where you've not painted, the blue bits of sky gets green colour on it. The outlines of the branches here will show through the green. Again, I'm painting around the edge of the canvas. So I'm just doing this little tree behind the church here with the same green. Careful not to get it onto the church. So while I've got the small brush, I'll just do these bits on the edge. You want nice crisp edges to these pine needles here, so they hang down. Again, I'm taking it over around the edge of the canvas. So use the bigger brush for some of these areas here. You can actually get more stippling with this one, so you get better pine needle effects or yew tree needle. So get the bulk of it done with the bigger brush, and then I can come in with the smaller brush and just do some of these more intricate areas. Alright, I'm just doing the grass here, and I'm using the small brush and horizontal brush strokes and just gently painting these areas here. And you have to refer to your photograph to see where the grass actually is, because it's not the whole area. So obviously this patch here, the snow hasn't fallen on this area under the tree here. Just a little bit of grass showing here, and then across here. Just careful not to paint it on the robin or on any of these stones or the church here. Just going carefully around up to the trees. You don't want too many brush marks in this. So I'm now painting these ivy leaves, and I'm using the small brush. I want to get these areas, painting them as individual leaves, and I've mixed this green using mainly yellow, smoothing all the paint out because the ivy leaves are very smooth, so I don't want any brush marks in them. Again, I'm painting them as individual leaves, each one like this, and smoothing the paint out, working up to the outlines, and then round the edge here just painting some green areas where the leaves could be. So you'll notice that I'm getting slightly different shades by adding more yellow. This makes the leaves look more interesting. So it doesn't matter which way your brush strokes go as long as you smooth out all the paint. And I'm working around these little areas of snow where there's some blobs of snow sitting on the leaves. I'm now painting the windows on the church using the small brush again, because these are very detail areas. And I've mixed this pale blue using mainly white, just using the very tip of the brush to paint these areas. I suppose it's mainly a reflection of the sky that they're this colour. Be careful not to get it onto the stonework. Just doing these windows across here now, getting rid of all the brush strokes. It's nice and even. I'm now doing the snow. We all know that snow is white, but it's actually very reflective, so it's reflecting the colour of the sky. So I've mixed this pale blue, putting it on quite thickly but following the contour of the ground with the brush strokes. So like where the edge of the lawn is here, it just curves over a little onto the path and leaving some brush marks in the paint. So the paint's going on thickly. I'll need to use both brushes because there is some bigger areas and then some quite intricate areas around the bird here. Painting around the tail and around the ivy wall here and up this side of the bird like this. By varying the mix, you get it looks more like real snow, just reflecting different lights. So you're adding more white or less white into the paint mix you've made up. I'm using horizontal brush strokes, so the way the ground lies, working up to this green area here and then around the corner. While I've got this mix, I'm just going to do a bit on the wall under the robin on the blue here to give it a bit of dimension. And also the roofs of the church are this pale blue, so I'm using the small brush for this area. Be careful not to get it onto the grey. Cutting along this line and then just following the angle of the roof like this. I've done the roof quite smooth because it's further away and it's a smooth roof anyway, not like the ground which is undulating. So now doing this area across to the left and over the path area. You can paint just straight across these lines on the path, these outlines, because that's to pick up later in the shadows. So we're going to use those outlines which will show through the paint that you're applying here under the tree here. Again, those outlines are for the shadows, so you can just ignore them at this stage. Although it is good to vary the mix of the different shades of blue. And again, I'm leaving some brush strokes in the paint and then just using the small brush for the detail. I'm just going to paint this roof of this faraway property here. I've got this snow colour and this church roof as well. So I'm now painting these branches in using the small brush, the very tip of the small brush. Need lots of patience for this and just take your time. I've just mixed up a shade of brown using a light brown and a bit of white. And you can use the light brown on its own and add a bit of green just to vary the colours a bit. So you're just tickling the surface just with the very tip of the brush. You've got the outline showing through the trees, which is just what I wanted. And then if you, at the end of the brush, if you just go this way, then you can get it quite fine. So you're lifting the brush off and then adding these little branches that are coming off it, like this. Just nice little brush strokes. So I'm now doing these trees across here, using the small brush and just the very tip to get these branches. So you're following the outlines that are on the canvas showing through the paint here. You'll notice that these tree trunks, they're paler on one side, so I'm using just the brown on its own for this side. And then I'll mix a bit of white with it for the other side of the trunk. Just finish this brown off first. So now just mixing a bit of white with it. So I've got a paler colour on this side. And then just adding a bit of white in the mix. Blending it all in like this. So you've got it paler on one side. Do the same to this tree. So I've got the light brown mixed with white here. And then I'm just going down this edge just with pure white. And then just blend it in. Take some of it up into the branches a bit. And I'm back to just pure brown here. You can break off from doing the branches any time and then come back to it. You know, you can do a bit on the bird and then come back to this again, just to give your hand a little rest. No need to rush it. It'll spoil it if you rush it. Nice, gentle brush strokes, just like you're tickling the surface of the canvas. No pressure at all. You can refer to the photo as much as you need to and go over any of these. You'll go over them again at stage 2 anyway, but you can just build up the layers. The branch is always getting thinner as they're going further up. So I'm now painting the clock face with the small brush, and I'm using the darker of the 2 blues and just very carefully painting around the edge like this, and then just smooth it off, getting rid of any excess colour like that. Right, I'm now going to paint stage 1 of the robin, and I'm using the small brush, starting with the red front first, and I've mixed this using yellow and the red to create this orangey colour. Following the direction of the feathers down like this, because the feathers are very smooth, I don't want any brush marks in this part of the bird, so I'm smoothing the paint out. When I did the printed canvas, the sketch, the beak I did a bit too long, so I want to cover up part of the beak because it doesn't look right, so I've painted over that there. The robin is often associated with Christmas, and this is because the early postmen wore red bibs, so when they came delivering the Christmas cards, they were known as robins, the postmen were, and this is why it's associated with Christmas. I'm now painting the upper part of the bird, and I'm using the small brush still, so I've made sure I've cleaned out the orange colour so that it doesn't mix with this light brown. I've mixed this colour using the white and the light brown mixed together, carefully just going up to the edge of the outline. And again I'm smoothing out the paint because the feathers are very smooth. I'm just painting it up to the red, and then again I'm following the direction of the feathers as they go down the wing. I'm just going over the top of this, around this white area on the wing here, so just a bit of this colour underneath, and then down the tail. So keep referring to your photograph as much as you need to, and down the tail feathers like so. And there's a tiny bit of brown here, so I'm just adding that there, just little bits of brown on the under part of the bird. So before these fawn patches that I've painted in have dried, I'm going on with white, and I've cleaned the brush out, and I'm putting the white on a bit thicker, again in the direction of the way the feathers lie, and then just where this fawny bit is, I'm just blending it in with the white like this, so the white just goes over it and blends in like that. I'm doing this white before the fawn has dried so that it does blend in like this, you see. Putting the paint on quite thick here so you can see the feathers, individual feathers. Just take it onto the orange a little, through the very tip of the paintbrush, like that. And while I've got the white, I'll just do some on this white patch of the wing, like that. So I'm now doing the eye and the beak with the dark brown and the small brush, using the small brush. So I'm just using the very tip of the brush for the eye, just little tiny brush strokes with a very steady hand, and the same with the beak. So just working to the edge of this outline here. Okay, so that's my painting finished at stage 1. So the bird's finished, and then the branches, I've put these branches in here and over here. So that's all finished at stage 1. And then I've just added a bit of grey for the roofs behind here in the background, a bit of colour in for this vegetation in the background here. I'm now ready to go on to stage 2. So I'm now doing stage 2 of the sky, and again I'm using the larger brush and nice horizontal brush strokes. Just careful not to get it on these branches here. And a lot of the patchiness will start to disappear at stage 2, particularly on things like the sky. It's quite a rewarding stage, just working my way down and then adding more white for a paler mix of blue as we come down the sky, just like we did in stage 1. I don't want any brush strokes or fused brush strokes as possible. Try and get rid of all your brush strokes so that it looks nice and smooth like the sky in the picture. So you're getting paler here as we're working our way down towards the horizon. Just cutting in against the edge of the church here to avoid getting the blue onto the grey, and then finishing off horizontally again with the brush strokes like this, painting around the cloud areas. So I'm just doing the clouds at stage 2 now, just by adding in pure white and then just blending it in. So you've got nice fluffy edges to the cloud. Again, I'm trying to avoid the painting on the branches here. So I'm now doing the stage 2 of the church, and I mixed a darker grey and using different shades of dark grey and even the dark brown itself with the small brush to get some of the detail and painting in the detail of this stone around the church. So I'm not painting over the whole area. This is the small brush, just very gentle small brush strokes. Using just dark brown on its own here, and then I'll blend that in with the darker grey. The dark grey I've mixed using white with this dark brown colour. So I'm just defining all the edges and any interesting stones that want to stand out. Put in the detail of this archway as well. You can break off at any time from this and come back to it. They're just painting in small brush strokes to show the actual individual stones here. Makes it come to life because it looks like the real stone now. Once you start adding this detail. Not painting every stone, just selective stones, just to give the impression of the stones. And you can revisit this and play with the greys. It's a good idea not to go too dark. You can always go darker, but sometimes it's a bit difficult to lighten it. Although this is quite feasible, just by adding more white, strengthening all the edges of the church so they stand out. All this stage I'll be using the small brush, just the very tip of the small brush, because it's quite intricate, keeping to the stone areas only. I'm following the photograph, and where it's dark on the photograph I'm painting it dark on the canvas here. So just the bottom of the windows where the stone's got more weathered, darker along here. So while I'm doing the detail on the church at stage 2, and I've got the grey mix, I'm just doing stage 2 on these monuments, and again varying the shades just to make them look more interesting. I'm now breaking off from doing stage 2 on the church just to show you what to do at stage 2 on these trees. So I've mixed this green, using mainly green with a small amount of dark brown. So it's this lovely rich colour which is ideal for these yew trees here. And I'm using the tip of the brush again. By dabbing it I can get like the effects of the tree working around the sky bits that I've left in. And you'll need to use both brushes for this stage. So for the bigger areas, I'm using the larger brush. And you'll see there's areas where you can see the lighter green through, which is what I want. So I'm not covering the whole area when I'm dabbing. I'm using the smaller brush for some of these more detail areas here, so I can get the more precise little brush dabs. So I'm using similar brush strokes, but just with the smaller brush here. So you want nice crisp edges, keep the brush well loaded. I'm just doing stage 2 on the grass now, and I'm using the small brush again. This is just pure green, just a few little areas. So I'm not painting over the whole amount, just to make this look more interesting. And then blending it in. Just putting in some little brush strokes where the grass is showing through the snow here. So I'm just mixed up this darker green, and I'm just adding little areas, not painting the whole leaf, but just to make it look more interesting. Try not to leave brush strokes, again because the ivy leaves are quite smooth, so just selected areas, just to give the leaves a bit more dimension, and blend it in like this. Right, now I've cleaned the brush out, and I'm just adding some pure yellow, just where these veins in the leaves are, just with the very tip of the brush, like that. Now with the small brush I'm just adding some of the detail in the church windows. I'm not painting the whole area again, this is with the light blue of the two blues. Just painting some of the area, putting in some of the detail, just to make the windows look more interesting. So just like the edges here where it's darker. This detail here is just reflecting some of the trees and the shading in the windows, makes it more lifelike. I'm now just doing stage 2 of the snow, and again you don't have to paint over the whole area, so this is just strengthening certain areas with this light blue used by mixing mainly white. Again, if you put the paint on quite thick, then you can get some texture into so it looks like the snow is three-dimensional. I'm just putting mainly white on these patches of snow on the ivy leaves and putting it on quite thickly so it looks more interesting, because this is in the foreground, it gives it a bit more dimension. So I'm now just doing stage 2 of these trees here, just strengthening the colours, make them look more interesting, adding a few extra branches where it looks a bit bare, just building these trees up. Again, just using shades of brown like we did in the first stage, taking it over the edge as well. And again, you can come back to this whenever you feel like it, have a break from it and then come back and add some more branches. I'm just doing stage 2 of these branches now with the light brown. Where I've lost some of the detail when I was painting the yew branches, I can just add the brown back in. So on stage 2 of the clock, I'm just putting the hands in using yellow. So just with the very tip of the brush, and then just put some of the markings on here, just a tiny dot like that. So I'm now doing stage 2 of the bird, and I'm just going over these colours again. So I've got this orange mix for the front of the bird, and again I'm just smoothing it out so that there's no brush marks, blending it in like this. I've cleaned up the brush and now doing the upper part here, and you can spend as long as you like just playing with the colours till you get them right, changing the colours even on the canvas. You can just add a little bit more white or a bit more light brown. If you look at your photo, there's a little bit of white here. I'm just adding a bit of white and then blending that in. It's just a bit paler here. You can do the same on the wing, just use the pure light brown and just blend it in with a mix of brown and white. Just adding a bit of white and then mixing it in because I got it a bit dark. And then for some of the feather detail, just using the dark brown, so just like under the wing and the detail of the wing feathers and the tail feathers as well. Just doing some of the white under parts now, and again putting the paint on quite thick. Just have to remember to clean your brush between each colour that you use. I'm doing these little lines so it looks more fluffy underneath here. So I'm just doing the eye with this dark brown. It just strengthens the colour and the beak as well. And then touch a bit more of the wing up here with this dark brown as well. So just very little gentle brush strokes. So that's stage 2 completed, and I've done quite a bit more detail and finished off the areas that I'd only done a little bit to show you how to paint it. So like on the church, I've added quite a lot of the stonework and the detail around here, particularly in the nearer parts, but then through here as well, and on the clock tower as well. I've added a white flagpole here and the cockerel on the weather vane in white. And I've done the trees, so I've done the trees both sides, this side and this side, with all the dabbling. So I've got the effect of the pine needles here. And I've gone over the trees, strengthened these trees and the branches across here. The ivy leaves been finished with the yellow veins and the robin. A bit more detail in the wing here and the tail. Pleased how that's come out. I'm now doing stage 3, the shadows, and I've mixed this shadow paint using the dark blue and the red. And there is a technique video on painting shadows which I recommend you to have a look at before doing this. And this particular shadow, the darker ones, I'm doing just with the shadow paint without water. So I'm just using it as is. If you refer to your instruction guide for the areas marked in blue, this shows you where to put the shadows, and also if you refer to your photo as well. I'm doing this shadow this side just watered down a little bit. I've mixed it with a little bit of water because the shadow isn't so bold, and just picking out some of the detail on these windows here and actually painting it on the window as well. I love this part of the painting. This stage really brings the picture to life, gives it so much more dimension. Now with my larger brush, I'm going to do one of the bigger shadows, which goes from this pillar across like this. This is a watered down shadow because it's not a strong shadow. By doing this with water, you can actually see the detail. You don't lose so much of the detail of the actual painting. Bringing it across here like this. You can build up the shadows, so you can come in and make them darker with another mix of the shadow paint watered down. If you don't get the shadow quite strong enough, you can always come back into it. It's very hard to lighten a shadow, so I recommend that you go in more watered down and then you can make it darker. It's very hard to make it lighter and go the other way. All this side of the building is in shadow, so I'm doing the watered down version. And you can just see the outline here where the shadow stops. It's picking up the edge of the building. Careful to keep it behind the robin. So that's stage 3 completed with all the shadows done. And you remember I did this shadow here using the shadow paint undiluted because I wanted quite a dark shadow. And then I did this shadow here using a diluted with water. So it's the shadow paint mixed with water because I wanted a softer shadow and I didn't want to lose the detail of the stonework. Then I've done other shadows around the archway and inside the archway on this side. And then across the roof here, you can see where the sun's catching the second part of the church. Across the roof, it's come down here, and I've picked out this shape here, which is reflection of the corner there, and then on the steeple and this side of the church. And I've done some shadows on the trees here and on the ivy and under the robin, and even on the robin a little bit here, opposite side to where the sun's coming. And then I've done these shadows coming across the floor here, so you've got bits of light where the sun's shining through the trees. And then I've just picked out a couple of shadows in the trees itself up here. I'm very pleased how that's turned out. Now we'll go on to stage 4, which is the highlights. I'm now doing stage 4, just using the pure white. This is the highlights. And there is a video on, just specifically a technique video just on highlights, which I recommend you have a look. And it's just very small amounts of this white, just using the very tip of the brush. And this really sets it off, just gives it another dimension. It's like the icing on the cake. These highlights are marked on red on your instruction guide, so you can see where to put them. And you can also refer to your picture. And also, while I've got this, I'm going to do the little white dot on the robin's eye. I'm just going to do a little dot on its beak as well, with the very tip of the brush. Minute dot, but it gives it a big difference. And also, it works well on windows as well, like this window here. Right, that's stage 4 completed with all the highlights done. I've added some more on the front of the church here, just on the window and on the arch where the sun's catching it, and on the edge of some of these points here. And I've just added a couple here where the sun's shining on this wall, where the sun's catching it. I've added some highlights on this gravestone here, and on this gravestone here as well, where the sun's coming through the trees and just catching different parts of the stone. I've added a highlight here where the sun's just catching on the edge of the curb there, and on the ivy here and here. I'm very pleased with that. Now that's the picture completed. Pleased how it's turned out. Very rewarding. I've really enjoyed this painting. Good luck with yours. Goodbye.